Got it.
All right, so I'll start by reciting our mission, which is our inclusive learning community provides the best academic and social experiences by educating the whole child, one child at a time. Mr. Klein?
Our vision is to cultivate visionary leaders and compassionate citizens to be engaged in the global community.
Thank you. Mr. Alvin? Mr. Elvin, you're muted.
All right, I should be able to be heard now. Oak Park Schools is committed to excellence and equity for all. We will create safe, physical, emotional, cultural safety.
Mr. Smith?
We will build positive, productive, and supportive relationships with all members of the community, including students, parents, and local leaders and businesses.
Ms. Corcoran?
I'm pulling it up on Board Book, and I'm on my phone and the same thing. At the same time looking at Board Book, but isn't this the belief statements?
Yes.
Yes. We're up to
Okay,
the
and
Third bullet point.
and which bullet point is it? One, two,
Third,
three,
number
four.
3.
Third.
Okay, we will use. Oh wait, it's kind of little. Equitable, anti-race instructions to instill a growth mindset and help all students reach their highest potential.
Ms. Lunkins? Ms. Lunkins, you are muted. Okay, Ms. Goodfriend, do you want to go ahead and read number 4?
We will prepare all students to be thoughtful, successful, and engaged members of the global community.
Thank you. Ms. Lunkins, you want to read number 5?
Are we reading from the code of ethics?
No, we're reading from our belief statements, which is important.
I don't have that one.
I can handle it.
Okay, go ahead.
We will work together to responsibly maximize our resources with transparency and accountability.
All right, thank you, everyone. And with that, we move on to approval of the agenda and order of business. I would like to propose one addition to the agenda, which is after the consent agenda, before reports. Our state representative, Regina Weiss, is joining us. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to add her to the agenda to address the board and the community. Is there any objection? Do any other board members have any other? I'm sorry?
Is there a topic that Ms. Weiss is going to present about?
She's a visiting dignitary, so I'm sure she'll let us know what.
Just curious.
Is there any objection to that?
No.
All right, and are there any other changes or questions about the agenda for members of the board?
Move approval of the agenda.
Okay, then without objection.
Support.
What's that, Mr. Trustee Elvin?
Move approval of the agenda as amended.
Support.
Okay. Moved by Trustee Elvin, supported by Trustee Smith. And we'll do this by voice vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The agenda is approved as amended. And we move on to our consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda. One is the approval of minutes from our regular board meeting of January 28th. The other is the personnel action items. Do any board members have any objection to either of those items being included on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we will move ahead with a voice vote on the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no.
I'm going to abstain from the
Consent
consent agenda.
agenda. Okay, so the consent agenda is approved with trustee Klein abstaining. And we now, it's my honor to welcome our new state representative and a member of the Education Committee up in Lansing, Regina Weiss. Representative Weiss.
Good evening. Thank you so much for fitting me into the agenda. I'll be brief because I know you have a packed agenda tonight. I just wanted to introduce myself to the school board and to the Oak Park Schools community and everyone watching as the newly elected representative for the 27th district. And I'm very excited to serve this district, particularly the school districts within this district. I have a long history of education myself. I taught for 5 years with the Detroit Public Schools Community District. And I also worked for the Tri-Community Coalition of Oak Park, Berkeley, and Huntington Woods for several years, and actually was involved in Oak Park schools. Through that, I ran the YOU Club, Young, Optimistic, and United at Oak Park High School for several years. So I'm very familiar with the school district and excited to be serving the school district. As you mentioned, I am serving on the school aid committee in Lansing. So I'm on appropriations and I'm on 3 subcommittees. I'm a minority vice chair for school aid. And I also am serving on licensing and regulatory affairs / insurance and financial services, and then environment, Great Lakes, and energy as well. So I'm excited to get to work on those committees, particularly when it comes to the important work that comes with setting the budget for school aid in the Michigan Department of Education. And I want to be a partner with Oak Park Schools and with all of our local school districts to make sure that our schools are fully funded and that you are adequately resourced, not just during this pandemic, but forever and always. So I just want to be here as a resource for you, and also want to be able to call on your expertise when needed. And so I just want to also, for anyone in the community watching, I just wanted to let you know as well that I'm having my first community conversation coming up on Wednesday, February 24th at 5 p.m. It'll be via Facebook Live, and it's going to be a joint community conversation with Senator Jeremy Moss and also Congressman Andy Levin. Obviously in Oak Park, we're in Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence's district, but part of the district also falls under Andy Levin's district as well. So that'll be a joint meeting again on February 24th at 5 p.m. on Facebook Live. And you can stream that through my page, which is State Rep Regina Weiss, or through Jeremy Moss's official Senate page as well. And then I also just wanted to give my contact information for anyone watching if they want to get in touch. My email is Regina Weiss, ReginaWeiss @house.mi.gov. And the phone number for our office is 517-373-0478. And then our website is housedems.com/Regina Weiss. And if anyone needs anything, any support, or if they just have questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to our office at any time. And I'd also be happy to answer any questions if anyone on the board has any questions.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I called it the Education Committee, and it is the School Aid Committee, Subcommittee on Appropriations. And I believe you're Vice Chair, is that right?
Minority Vice Chair, yes.
Minority Vice Chair. So congratulations on that, and we look forward to working together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any board members who have questions for Representative Weiss? Okay, thank you, Representative Weiss.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to mention, I just realized that when I was mentioning the consent agenda, I failed to mention that also on the consent agenda was approval of the December 2020 financial statements. So if there's any board members who would like to have that brought up as a separate action item, we can add that to the action item agenda. Otherwise, we can move forward. Is there anyone that would like to have that added to the separately to the action item agenda since it wasn't mentioned?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So then I move that we amend the agenda to add action item 6C, which is approval of the December 2020 financial statements.
Support.
Is okay, moved by myself, supported by trustee Klein. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The agenda is amended. And we move on to reports. Our first report is from the superintendent, Dr. Hitchcock.
Good evening, President Hoyta and board trustees, members of the community. I want to start off with just a few mentions. One of the most important that we're very, very proud of is our very own Sharon Tarver, who is being recognized by Oakland schools, particularly in the Department of Special Populations, with the Above and Beyond Award. We are thrilled to share that we learned today that Sharon, our para-president, is the recipient of the Oakland Department of Special Populations Above and Beyond Award. This award is given to educators who demonstrate exemplary commitment to students by participating in rigorous professional learning activities facilitated through the Oakland County or Oakland Schools Department of Special Populations. Ms. Tarver is being recognized for her dedication to children with disabilities and her commitment and professionalism in pursuing professional learning by giving up her summer vacation as well as after school time. Ms. Tarver is truly a hard worker and she is tremendously dedicated, and we're very fortunate to have Tarver as a member of the Oak Park staff. So I would like to publicly thank and recognize Ms. Tarver for all of her hard work. She puts in long hours, is so thoughtful and caring and concerned and committed to Oak Park schools. So please join me in congratulating Ms. Tarver as the recipient of the Above and Beyond Award. Next up, oh, let's give her a hand. Ms. Tarver, I'm shocked.
Tarver, way to go.
I'm surprised she's not on this call. If she is on the call.
She's always on.
Okay, she's always on, so
Yeah.
I'm shocked. Well, I'm sure she'll text me in a bit and say.
I'm here.
Oh,
thank you thank you so much.
Thank you. We're so proud of you, and we are
Thank
proud
you.
to have you represent the school district.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so for the members of our community, this was a question that came up at the elementary parent coffee on Friday. First of all, thank you to all the elementary parents that were able to join us. And thank you for our wonderful hosts, the elementary principals, Dr. Harris-Hugen, Mr. Haley, and Dr. Wright. One of the questions that came up was about the pandemic EBT bridge cards. And so what we learned is later that day, the governor released a press release and indicated that families of students in grades pre-K through 12 are eligible to receive funds if you qualify for free or reduced price lunches at school and in-person learning is not available or is not available on a full-time basis. Families will receive approximately $127.53 monthly for each eligible child who has no in-person classes and attends a school that is fully virtual, such as Oak Park schools. For students who attend a school with a hybrid schedule of in-person and virtual learning, families will receive approximately $77.06 for each eligible child who attends. So the fund will be loaded automatically onto parents' cards, and they will be backdated through September, through June. And you don't have to apply to receive this assistance. This assistance is available to any families who already have cards. And if you do not have a card, one should be mailed to your home. And this will start to occur. The funds will show up on your cards, and the cards being mailed to homes will start to occur in March. And this funding is coming directly from the state through the federal government. So the school district is sort of just a liaison for sharing this information, but that the funding will come directly from them. Last but not least, we are having a virtual kindergarten roundup. We are excited to have this special event hosted by our 3 elementary principals that I just named, and our kindergarten staff members. For parents who have students who are transitioning from preschool to kindergarten for their official start to their K through 12 school experience. We will have an all district kindergarten roundup on February 25th. And then each elementary school in the district will have a separate roundup that's specific to the personality, character, nature of their individual schools. And on Tuesday, March 9th, one will be held at Einstein, March 10th at Key, March 11th at Pepper, and those will all be held virtually. So look for information that will be shared. If you're a parent and you are a neighbor or live in the area or have friends who have kindergarten students, please share this information with them. And we will share this information throughout our community and on our social media pages. So now I would like to transition into our presentation. And as I was thinking about this, one of the things that dawned on me that I thought is important to remind everyone of is that on December 14th, when we came together for a recommendation for our return to school plan, the board approved our plan, which was, it included a number of dates for when we were going to return to school. And we said within that plan, we would also provide the board with an update. So tonight, please consider this an update to the plan that our board approved on December 14th for return to school. I am going to share my screen and show the presentation. So bear with me. Okay. So first of all, I want to make it clear that we come to our community, our staff, our board in peace. We all want what is in the best interest of our students, staff, families, everyone in the communities that we serve. And I want you to know that we do not take these decisions lightly. This has been a really, really difficult time to navigate because, you know, typically I can lean on my own integrity about what I feel is best for kids. But this has been a difficult time because it's not as clear as it usually is. So we are going to do everything possible to meet the needs of all of our students, whether our students choose to remain virtual or choose to return in person. But I have to say again, we come in peace, love, we have everyone's best interest at heart. I assure you of that. I've spent countless sleepless nights as well as my colleagues trying to do everything possible to assure that we take the safest approach as possible. And if you have friends or live in communities throughout this area, you will know that the plan for during COVID-19 has been probably the most cautious and conservative out of every school district in this area. So I hope that demonstrates that we do not take this decision lightly. Your health and safety, as well as the health and safety of our students, is paramount to us. So I have shared these guiding principles before, and we have not wavered from them. We remain committed to those, health and safety again, being our number one priority, making research-based decisions, having a commitment to social emotional support, high-quality instructional practices, and providing learning tools for success. So we all know that COVID-19 is a moving target. When I was preparing to give this presentation or thinking about the update or providing the original recommendation on December 14th, if you recall, during that time, I'm not sure we heard much about different variants or other variables or knew exactly what to expect in terms of vaccines. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that COVID-19 is a moving target and it is ever changing. I hope we've demonstrated that we are willing to pivot and change with it to ensure that we remain committed to our guiding principles. So one of the things that happened between the last time I presented to the board about our return to school plan is on December 14th, we had provided somewhat of a back to school guidance plan that we would use based on a letter system or a matrix that was developed by the Oakland County Health Department and supported by the MDHHS. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends on how you look at it. The governor and the Oakland County Health Department.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? Is that my friend, Mr. Dickerson? I'm glad you joined us today.
We can hear you, Dr. Hitchcock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I had a heater on, so I'll turn that off so I can be more clear. So the governor decided when she presented to the state that we should return to school, that she was creating a goal or had developed a goal for us to return to some type of in-person instruction on March 1st. She didn't outline what that goal would look like. She didn't dictate what type of schedule each school would have, but she said that that was her goal. And she was urging us to provide some type of in-person learning for students. Additionally, this matrix became obsolete. So we are no longer following this matrix or being asked to follow this matrix. At that time, on December 14th, I originally indicated that many school districts, if you see where the arrow is, they were looking to be at a level C before they discussed returning. Right now, every school district in Oakland County, which is the county that we fall under that umbrella, they have all given some indication of a return to school plan to date. So they are no longer using this matrix and it is now obsolete. So when we found out that the governor had made this statement, or she shared this and shared the goal with us, we decided that we were going to resurvey members of our school district community. And so we started off by surveying our students. Our most important clientele is our students. And we received 735 student responses. This time we only surveyed students 6 through 12. And we determined that 55% of our students were interested in returning to school. 55% said they need in-person instruction to learn best. 76% indicated their top priority is staying safe and to limit COVID-19 exposure, which we agree with them. 16% indicated a need to return so my parent or guardian can work. And 30% indicated that they do not want to continue online learning. And they had a myriad of reasons for some of the responses that they gave. When we surveyed the staff, we had 225 responses. And of that 225 responses, 13% of our staff members said that they are ready to return right away. 54% of our staff members indicated that they were prepared to return under certain conditions. And 33% said that they are not comfortable returning. So I have outlined in yellow because I hope that we are able to provide additional information for the 54% of our staff that indicated that they would return under certain conditions, as well as put some of the 33% of our staff at ease with some of the training and protocols that we're putting in place. Oops. So in addition to the survey of our staff, we learned from our previous bumps in the road, if you will, and we decided to get additional staff input. So we had additional staff input on January 11th when we met with our whole team, the teaching and learning department, epidemiologist, the lead nurse, and the district nurse on January 19th. In addition to several other days that our Teaching and Learning Council has been meeting, but myself and 2 other cabinet members attended to present to our Teaching and Learning Council on January 19th. We also met with our building and district administrators on the 21st. We had a town hall on January 27th with several staff members. As recent as Friday, we met with, or last Friday, we met with all of our union presidents and leadership, as well as met again as an executive leadership team in the Teaching and Learning Department on February 2nd. So we believe that we have gotten a number of different perspectives, input, learned a little bit more about people's concerns. And so when we met with the union leadership on the 29th, one of the questions that I was asked by a news reporter was, what would it take for your staff to feel safe to return to school? And so I framed that question to our union leadership and to the other individuals that were on the call. The reason the reporter reached out to me was because we are one of the only school districts that has remained fully virtual throughout the entire pandemic. And he was trying to get a sense of, you know, how he could advocate on our behalf or what it was that we were looking for in order to feel safe. So one of the things that, or this list of things are things that we came up with. Vaccine availability. And so I have a check mark there because I believe with the timeline that we are updating the board on this evening, it will provide additional access and availability for staff who is interested in getting the vaccine to get the vaccine. Number of in-person students confirmed. So just as we had so many staff members jump in to assist us with determining which families were in need of an electronic device, we'll be asking our staff to call our families to get a confirmation of their plan for the rest of the school year. Are they planning to remain fully virtual, or are they interested in having their child to return? That information is going to guide our decision-making on the type of schedule, because we remain committed to the CDC measures on 6 feet, a minimum of 6 feet of social distancing in learning environments, masks, and proper hygiene. Health and safety measures, we remain committed to that, and I will outline a list of different training opportunities in the next couple slides, and all of the steps and resources that we have purchased in order to do that. Structure and consistency. One of the things that I would say is that remaining 100% virtual has allowed us to be consistent, for our students to access learning in the same way every day, each day. And that may be difficult for some folks to understand what I mean by that if you're not familiar with other districts. Well, there are other districts around us that have started and stopped, and changed the schedule up to 5 times at this point in the school year. So I was glad that the union leadership, agreed that it's important to have a consistent structure. We are also very proud of the relationship that we have with the Henry Ford Health Systems, and that we're providing COVID diagnostic testing within the district, which would be available to staff members, and what was shared with the union leadership. We have purchased air purifiers and repaired univents in our classrooms. We've repaired our windows. Apparently our many windows in the school district were in disrepair. And during the time that we've been closed, we have ensured that they're operational and able to be used when we return. Consistent staff returning. This was important for unity purposes, for there to be a pre-K through 12 start. Now, they may not all start on the same day, but within the same time frame. And the ability to maintain instructional technology platforms. So this one I am interested in sharing because it's something that I had not considered before. It came up that, it might not be healthy to use as many papers, or teachers correcting papers and those papers being handled back and forth between students and teachers. So we should try to maintain our use of technology. So students will be able to continue to keep the Chromebooks at home that they previously were using, and will have access to Chromebooks at school. So we also surveyed our families, and we determined, first of all, this was the highest response rate that we have received throughout this pandemic. So we really do appreciate the number of parents who responded to our survey. And we had 36% of our parents indicating that they would like to have some form of in-person learning, and 64% said that they would like to continue to be online. And you'll see on the right, there were some other questions asked about transportation, the need for special education services, and that 40% of families worry that their student is less engaged online. So I am going to share with you or remind you of what our timeline was. Having said that, one to keep in mind that COVID-19 is a moving target. And so the timeline that we're proposing is extremely cautious, careful, conservative, one that I hope communicates our value of our staff and the important role that they play in the process of helping our students return to school. And one that will also communicate that if for any reason, if the variables change and something becomes more risky than what we're comfortable with, that we are prepared to pivot back to become fully virtual. So our timeline, if you recall, this was the least aggressive of the timelines that I shared on December 14th. So we've adjusted it. So February 22nd, a return for all building and district administrators, executive and administrative assistants, and all administration building staff. So we will all return on February 22nd. On March 15th, we will be asking for all teachers to return. Teachers this includes ancillary staff, so counselors, psych, social workers, paras, and security will all return March 15th. And finally, we will be prepared for our students to return on April 5th. Why April 5th? It is the end of the natural break after spring break, and it is the beginning of the testing season where we have to begin to prepare for our students to take a state assessments, because that has not changed. We have not been given the green light that we've received any waivers to, that we no longer need to test students. So that's our timeline. Why are we having staff members come back? We're having staff members come back because we want to help you have a healthy transition back into the school environment. I think all of us have experienced a certain level of trauma over this COVID-19 time period. I will say that we, said that we were not coming back on March 12th. The next day, the governor indicated that she was closing schools. And so we just turned on a dime. And so we've heard stories like my same coffee mug that might have been sitting on my desk that day could still be sitting there because we just up and left the buildings. And so we know that there's a certain level of trauma involved in that, in addition to the fact that in our personal lives, many of us have experienced grief and loss. I know that firsthand as we lost 3 family members due to COVID-19 in my family. So I want you to know that we're not taking this lightly, but we do believe that it's also healthy to start making some steps to return to as normal an environment as we can. So we want that to be a healthy transition. And so that's why we have been so generous in the dates for the timeline. We're going to continue our partnership with Kids Kicking Cancer, providing breath breaks and mindfulness strategies. We know that in my first semester at the high school, they had a really well done professional development opportunity that involved a lot of health and wellness opportunities. One of those things was Mrs. DA's yoga class. And so we're hoping that we can partner with Mrs. DA to provide some additional opportunities there. We know that Blue Cross Blue Shield offers online and in-person mental health support. We will frequently offer some ask the nurse check-ins. I mean, as questions come up, it's helpful to be able to ask a healthcare professional. So we will offer a number of those Zooms. We know that during our all district staff meeting, that our district nurse was great at answering all of our questions. On-site social emotional support room, administrator check-ins. We also know that FEMA is providing free mental health counseling 24 hours, 7 days a week through a Stay Well counseling hotline that we will also communicate to all of our staff. So the CDC indicates they have a level of risk in terms of transmission in the school environment. And so when you look at the level of risk, we are in that white box at the top. I hope you can see the lowest risk. We're in the virtual learning box and level of risk right now. As we return to school, there will be some risk, and we will make that transition. At the elementary level, we know just by virtue of how the elementary level is structured, there will be very little mixing of groups of teachers or students throughout the school day. We are moving into the medium risk depending on the structure that we provide for the 6th through 12th grade students. And the only reason we would fall in the medium risk category is because some students, there will be some mixing of students and staff, but that is the only bullet that brings us into the medium risk category. We're able to take every other measure except for that one to stay out of that medium risk space. I can assure you that there are many of our colleagues, and some may be familiar throughout the county and the area, that are in the higher and highest risk category. And that is not an area that we're willing to cross into at this time. So what is the training and preparation that we're going to provide to staff? First, we're starting with 4 half days of COVID-19 training for administrators and administrative assistants. And that will be facilitated by our district nurse and Carol Biglio. and Carol has a background in health, school health. So they have been preparing throughout this whole time for what our quarantine room will look like, what the sick room will look like, how all of that is going to be worked out. And so we're going to spend 4 days of training just on all of those protocols and procedures. Then we will have a district-wide training for staff, all of our staff, we know is on March 5th. So that day will be dedicated to staff for how to live into these protocols and what does that really look like in classrooms each day. Then we will have 2 full days for classroom prep and planning time, which will be asynchronous days for our students, but staff members will have the opportunity to go into classrooms, take any personal items home, put items away that will provide enough space for at least 6 feet of distancing. And you'll have some time to plan what the transition to in-person will look like for some of the students. There will be a COVID-19 training material catalog that includes a number of procedures for teachers to use. We have training videos for students. We have training videos for staff that have all been developed by our district nurse and our county nurses. And they will provide some Zoom meetings, and some have already done that, but continue to do that. We'll continue our free walk-in COVID-19 testing every Wednesday at the Oak Park High School for any staff members who are interested. So what are our cleaning and sanitizing protocols look like? It's one thing to share these things, but we thought that we would provide some examples of what these things actually look like, so you could have proof of life these things exist in our school setting. And so these sanitizing stations will be on teachers' desks. Each teacher will have one of these buckets. You may not be able to see it from the picture, but this isn't a small Clorox wipes kind of bucket. It's a large bucket. So you'll have a couple of these in your classrooms. This is an example of Pepper Elementary School, where we have sanitizing stations up on the walls, and those exist in our other buildings as well. We've purchased air purifier units. And I wanted to show you that these little smiling Amazon faces in the background of those boxes are air purifier units for our teachers and staff. Additional hand sanitizing, this whole space. So if you're familiar with Oak Park High School, you may know that that garage area was full of all types of interesting things. We tried to go in and organize that and make space for this new equipment that we've been able to purchase with some of the COVID dollars. So this is a lot of new cleaning equipment, garbage cans, mopping buckets. There's a host of different things that we have stockpiled because we have kind of started and stopped thinking about coming back to school on several occasions. These Clorox 360 machines, you can see to the left there, that is the Clorox 360 materials in the warehouse. This gentleman here is not from our school district, but is using one of these machines. 2 of these machines will exist in each of our buildings. And here are some additional photos of the new cleaning equipment. In our offices, we will have these plexiglass dividers up. We're going to do everything possible to mitigate any visitors. We will not welcome visitors at this time, but sometimes there's an emergency of some kind where someone may have to come in. These plexiglass dividers will exist in office areas. Each of our buildings will have these symptom screening protocols. It will be critical for us to adhere to, for people not to even get past this point if they are exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19. All of our buildings will be equipped with these do your part, stand 6 feet apart signs that are pasted to the floor, signs for the walls. We will not bend or lax on any type of CDC mitigation effort. So people will be required to wear masks, will be required to distance themselves. Our PPE equipment, we've shared this in a previous presentation, but we thought it was helpful to share it again. We have 3 different types of masks. So we have surgical masks that this young man has on the left. We have the humanity shields that were recommended by one of our teachers. So we have those available for teachers. And we have these red Oak Park masks that are available for staff and students as well, and disposable gloves. So we have PPE available. In unique situations where you are working with a particular special needs population, or there is a specific need, there will also be gowns available for some of our staff. Clean environments. So this is an area where I know it's a sore spot. We've heard from staff members loud and clear that there are a significant number of concerns about the cleanliness of our buildings. And so these are some of the things that we've done in the interim to be prepared as well. So operational / repaired classroom windows, repaired classroom univents that must be free of obstruction. So the vents inside of our classroom, please, you can't put any bookshelves or any other items in front of those because it prevents them from working properly. We've repaired soiled and damaged ceiling tiles, repaired damaged floor tiles, removed broken blinds, replaced light bulbs, cleaned courtyards for student use if needed. We know that students coming back April 5th will hopefully begin the process of the weather breaking a little bit. And so we might be able to do some activities outside. Personal hygiene. One of my first experiences, and this teacher will know who she is if she's on the call, she took me to one of the restrooms in one of our buildings, and we had a long conversation about just ensuring that we had clean environments for clean restrooms for students and staff. So our staff restrooms have been installed with touchless soap and paper towel dispensers. We're thoroughly clean, as well as our student restrooms installed with soap dispensers and repaired hand dryers, and we're thoroughly clean. This next piece is also in a sore spot that some of our staff had mentioned on when they shared previous public comments, and I'm excited about the opportunity to have this software because this new maintenance work order software will provide opportunities to streamline maintenance request submissions to quickly resolve issues, improve communication with the building staff, prioritize tasks as needed. So I gave an example when I was giving this presentation before that, you know, if you have a serious situation like a bloody nose or something like that, and someone is screwing a pencil sharpener into the wall, the custodian will see all of these tasks in their phone and be able to determine what is the most important need that I need to address right now. It will also allow the management or supervisors to view the order status for continued growth and improvement, and prevent custodial staff from misplacing work orders. So this type of software gives us data. It shares how long is it taking for these work orders to be completed? Is it happening in a reasonable period of time? How many people do we need to efficiently and effectively get those things done? And data drives our decision making. And I said that was one of our guiding principles. We may find, hey, we need a couple more custodians because it's taking too long to get to some of these things. This type of software will be able to provide that information for us. So teaching and learning, what does this look like for teaching and learning? So for teaching and learning, first of all, one of our guiding principles was about our resources. So we know that staff have received the new teacher and administrator laptops, paraprofessionals, have a Chromebook. When you return to the classroom, teachers will have a docking monitor. So they'll be able to travel, teachers will be able to travel with their laptops. So you can come to school, plug it into a monitor and use it like a desktop. And then when you want to take it home or take it to a meeting, you can do that as well. A keyboard, a mouse, all of those things will be equipped in sort of a model classroom environment. As mentioned earlier, students will be able to keep their Chromebooks at home, also having access to Chromebooks at school. Classroom instruction tools will include a document camera, Promethean board at the secondary levels, and audio enhancement systems, which is going to be their key, especially in elementary environment, but they're primarily key now for all of us because we will have to use these masks. Teachers will have to use masks, and all of us will have to use masks to communicate. And the audio enhancement system will allow students to hear better, hear the instruction better. So I know some of you are waiting on bated breath to hear what will our learning model look like. So first of all, for our community, I want to ensure that everyone knows that we continue to have two options for families. We will have an in-person option and we will have a virtual option. If a family is fully virtual right now and they choose to remain virtual, they will have the ability to do so. The families that are about 36% of our families that indicated that they would like an option to return to school, provided they meet a couple of qualifications, and those are they would have to have all of their childhood immunizations or a waiver on file that indicates that they are waiving them for a specific issue. So there's no vaccine for children at this time. So I'm speaking of traditional childhood immunizations. All of those need to be fulfilled in order for a student to return in person. The second piece is critical, is that if a student develops symptoms in a school setting, they must have a parent or a friend or a neighbor or some emergency contact that can pick them up for school. So those will be the two foundational pieces that will be necessary for students to return in person. So in the first option, there's a phase 1A and an option phase 1B. Phase 1A includes pre-K through 12 special populations. So these are students with IEPs, 504s, or any other specific learning needs, and pre-K through 5 students. They will have one of these 3 schedules. Learning hubs, so that's on a limited basis, small groups of students. A concurrent model, which is a team teaching approach, or a hybrid model that involves either half days or alternating day schedules. This is also true for option phase 1B, which is 6th through 12th grade students. They will have the same options. So many of you may be thinking, oh my goodness, what is the schedule? We need to know that right now. One of the things that's important for us, and we want to continue to value, is our staff input. And so we believe that it's important to, first of all, collaborate with our staff to get all of the necessary information when we call each family to confirm their virtual preference or their in-person preference. Then we will know how many students we're dealing with or wanting to come back and needing to manage in a school environment in person. Once we have that information, we will then make a decision in collaboration with our staffs. Should we use a learning hub model, concurrent model, or a hybrid model? And for a variety of reasons, all of those models are problematic. So what we're truly doing is choosing from the least problematic model. We know that none of these models are perfect. And then on the other side, option 2, as I mentioned, this would continue to be a virtual learning option for any family that wants to continue to remain virtual. So our next steps, we will need to communicate with our families and staff. All district staff meeting, which we had a great recommendation from one of our principals to invite our county epidemiologist, of course, our district nurse, and any other nurses that work at the county level that can come and answer some questions. Transition support scheduling and confirmation. So you'll get the information on exactly where to log on or report to receive the training. Administrators returning to the building, so all of us being in the environment, provide time for staff to unpack and reacclimate to classrooms. We know that that's what two of those asynchronous days are all about. So we'll need to schedule that to make sure that we're social distancing and thinking through if staff members need assistance, family members to help them carry things, the schedule for each individual building. Complete the setup for schools to be equipped with a designated quarantine area and separate health room. So that is one of the key pieces that we've been working on, and that our facilities and district nurse and Carol Diglio have been working on really, really hard to come up with a plan for that keeps everybody safe. And we believe that we've landed on that, and we'll be sharing more of that when we do the trainings. Distribution of PPE and disinfection materials. So we did not just pass out all of this information on people's desks, because we wanted to make sure that, it was in a secure location and the right people got the right equipment. Assess classrooms to adjust furniture for social distancing. We talked about that. Prepare outdoor, indoor school common areas with directional signs and such. We want you also to brainstorm what are some things that you might want to do outside, and post additional signage for mitigation, health tips, and protocols throughout the building. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for any questions from the board.
All right, so I'm going to go through our board members one by one to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions. And I'll start with Trustee Klein. Do you have any questions for the superintendent?
I do. I have a few questions. I don't know if I should lay them all out or go one at a time. Doc, if you have a preference, let me know.
Lay them all out. Hit me.
Okay. Starting from the beginning, you mentioned that most districts are back already in some form or another with some offer of in-person. I'd like to know which districts locally are back and which ones are not back at all. If Oak Park is really the only one, I think we have to ask ourselves, at what point are we, taking this one step too far? Do we need to move like everybody else is? I also, logistically speaking, curious about transportation in terms of busing. I know that for the middle school.
Mr. Klein, when I said lay it on me, I will not remember all of these questions. So let me at least start with question one, and you give me question two, and then I'll answer that, okay?
You're probably better off, because I'll forget some along the way.
Okay, see, that's what I'm banking on. No, I'm just kidding. So the first question is about the other school districts. We have a spreadsheet. This is a question, and we have a superintendent's listserv. This question comes up probably every 3 to 4 days, at least weekly. If all of the schools are not back, they will be back shortly and have a plan to return far sooner than April 5th for students. The only district that I think is about as conservative as we are is Southfield, but they do have some small groups of students returning to school. Many of the superintendents that I have spoken with or read their plans, none of them have say anything about April. Everybody is returning either February or March. If you think about like districts like Detroit or Pontiac, those districts, Pontiac went back last week. They started going back last week, and they have a new group started today. Detroit is also starting back, I believe, February 25th. So I guess I say all of that to say I don't want to go through the email and go down each school district. But what I will tell you is that every district that I have heard of in this area, and that includes everybody in Oakland County and Detroit, is having students return in some form or fashion before April.
So why are we pushing it so much farther back when all these other districts have already started? Are they having some sort of significant issues or something that are red flags for us? What's our weight? I know you talked a lot about how we're being super careful. I'm actually kind of coming from the other side. What's keeping us from starting, at the timeline that all these other schools are already starting?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. We have some unique variables in Oak Park, even Pontiac. So let's look at Pontiac. Pontiac probably has as similar of demographic of students as we have, but they are working with one small community of people. We have kids coming from 100 different zip codes. And so we know that COVID-19 is impacting different geographical areas in different ways. So there could be a spike in the 48221 zip code that doesn't exist in the 48227 zip code, but we have multiple kids coming from multiple areas. So we're trying to really think through, what is that going to look like? How going to meet those needs? So part of it was trying to get data from Detroit and from the Wayne County Health Department to make an informed decision. We have still not been able to secure that data. So now we're taking this really conservative approach to see, as we monitor the information we have access to online, is it still able to come back because we have folks in all the areas. It
sounds like,
oh, go ahead.
It sounds like, if I could sum it up from what I understand, that we are uniquely diverse geographically. And so we have kids coming from many more different places than other districts, and any one of those places could have its own outbreak. Therefore, the probability that we would get tagged and then in fact spread farther than other districts is much higher for us. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Additionally, I mean, that addresses that issue, but I'm sure several of the teachers on this call could outline some other unique needs. Some of those districts, they don't have issues with half days, students not being picked up. So large groups of students still being at the school, even though we're, trying to run a half day schedule so kids are not mixing and coming in contact with each other, because we are being prepared for if we have large groups of students that aren't picked up, or if the students remain at the school, or if they remain at the bus stop, can we develop a partnership with the local church in Detroit? Some of these, I can go on, but to capture it by saying we have some very unique needs as it relates to our student population, the demographics, geographic locations, just practical sort of buses that are coming from way across town, what that would look like, some of the societal challenges that our families have. We just have some variables and challenges that some of our counterparts do not.
Okay. You talked in terrific detail about the data that we've collected from our students and also from our teachers. I think the number was something like 250 teachers recently responded to the last survey. How many teachers were surveyed? Like, what's the response rate on our surveys?
So I'm going back to that slide just so I don't speak out of turn.
I have to apologize if that was on a slide. I don't know if everybody else on the call knows that I don't have a visual right now.
No worries. 225. I know you're a lawyer, so I want to get the exact number. 225 staff members responded to that survey.
Out of how many who were sent the survey?
The survey was sent to all staff members. I'm gonna have to ask one of my colleagues if they can
Yes.
help.
So, good evening. The survey was sent to roughly 480 staff members total. We had
So
to
that's pretty good.
exclude
Like a 40%
first central
response rate.
office staff. Pardon?
That's like a 40% response rate, roughly,
about,
while I'm on the
yes.
freeway.
Yes.
That's pretty good. Do we know, Dr. Hitchcock, what percentage of our staff has had the opportunity to get the vaccination, and if that would affect the overwhelming majority's reluctance to come back?
Well, you know, that's one of the tricky parts for us. Is sort of a conundrum that we're in, because, you know, we wanted to give a reasonable amount of time for as many staff members that wanted to get the vaccine to get the vaccine. But that's a personal, confidential issue because it involves their medical care. So we cannot get that information from staff members. They don't have to share it with us. Now, if there are staff members who say, oh yeah, I got the vaccine, just anecdotally, they can share that information, but we are unable to request that information to make that determination.
Okay. And then the last question that I had was about transportation logistics. Do we have something worked out with the busing? And because it's going to take, I know, for example, I was getting at the colloquial schools that have been using the busing have doubled their buses because they're only being used at half capacity. Are we going to be able to do that in Oak Park? Or maybe it won't be a problem because we're going to only have half the kids coming back. I don't know.
Our belief is that with 36% of the students coming back, that the busing issue will not be an issue. But again, that's one of those areas that is why we have such a lengthy timeline, because we need to make that determination.
So you broke up in the last sentence. Can you repeat that?
Reasons why we've given ourselves so much time, because
Gotcha.
we can make sure we have that information in the bus schedules in place. We know that we may have to change some of the timing on our buses to ensure that students are not sitting or won't be on the bus for an inordinate amount of time, contributing to addition.
Terrific. The last question I have is it too far in advance to look at extended schedules to make up for lost instruction and looking into like later June for ending the year?
Well, we have a contract, our several different associations. So we haven't really discussed changing this. But what we have discussed is a really robust summer school offering. Really high incentive for some of our best professionals in the area that rhyme with Oak Park. We'd be asking our staff to, if they're interested in summer school and providing, you know, an incentive to encourage or contribute or motivate folks to have a really robust summer school program.
Terrific. Thank you, Doc. Sorry to put you through the ringer.
No problem.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to other board members. I do just want to acknowledge that there were a couple of audience members that have raised their hand through the participants tab. Just a reminder to the community that this is a meeting of the Board of Education that's held in public. So at this time, we are not taking public comment or public questions. There will be plenty of opportunities for people to get their questions answered in other forums. You can contact your building administrator, and there will be information on the website about how to get questions answered. We'll also be we will be taking public comments after all of the reports before we get to the action items. And so at that time, if those individuals would like to provide comment to the board, that's certainly welcome. But again, questions will be answered in a different forum. And so I'm going to move on now to Trustee Lunkins. Do you have any questions for the superintendent?
I have a couple questions. And I think everybody on the board knows that it's different having someone die from it, which is making it easier, than to actually go through the whole turmoil from March until June. My question is, with this new stream of COVID that's out here now that has already hit Wayne County, and we're getting some of Wayne County's kids, what is that going to do for us? I'm not in favor of going back in April. I'm gonna be honest, and that could be over exaggerating this and that, but I know what I went through, and I would hate to see somebody that I know, or a kid or an adult, go through what I went through, and it wasn't easy. And then they're talking about this other stream of COVID that's out there now. We're still trying to get rid of COVID that we're in now. I'm not even sure I'm gonna even take this shot. I'm not sure. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna tell you like I told my doctor. I'm afraid I don't trust none of it, and that's just me. But I know that my grandkids, I'm not sending my grandkids back until I get a better.
I'm sorry, Trustee Lunkins, I'm sorry, but I do have to bring us to order. Do you have a question for the superintendent?
I asked you a question.
Okay.
I did ask you a question. The question was, with this new stream of COVID-19 out there that has already hit Wayne County as of yesterday, what are we going to do?
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hitchcock?
Yes, first, I will acknowledge that anyone who has suffered loss or been sick themselves, I understand that it is scary. It's a scary time. And I, as mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I've lost 3 people in my family as well. So I understand that this is a scary time for many, many people. I also understand that there are 2 variants, the UK variant and the South Africa variant. They're trying to make a determination as to whether or not the vaccine will address those 2 variants. I wish I could answer what we're going to do about the 2 variants. I don't have the skill level that Dr. Fauci has. So all I can do is continue to monitor. And that's what I think is healthy about our really conservative timeline, is because whatever is going to happen, we will know what is happening by April 5th. And if the new variant poses a significant threat, I'm prepared to return to the board and say that we don't think it's safe to return to school. So I can't, I don't, and I'm not being tongue in cheek, but I wish I did. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what will happen with this variant. If the new variant, you know, gets into our area and it creates havoc and the transmission goes up, we have almost 2 months before we're even considering bringing students back. And so as adults who all have our separate spaces in our school environments right now, we know that we need to take every effort to stay safe. But over the course of 2 months, we should know far more information about these other 2 variants. And if they pose a significant risk, I will come back to the board just as I have previously and say that we're not prepared to return.
Trustee Lunkins, if you have more questions, you can unmute yourself.
I mean, you know, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Hitchcock. It's just that I'm just concerned about it because of the way that they said this is new string of COVID is hitting so hard and so fast that they don't even know how to treat it yet.
I know, I'm
That's
concerned.
what I'm afraid of.
I'm concerned too, Ms. Lunkins. I hear you. I do. I understand. And that's why, you know, Mr. Klein, the other piece about why is it taking so long for us to come back is so we give ourselves enough time to get vaccinated. Let's hope the people that want to get vaccinated, that they'll be protected against these new variants. And if these vaccines don't protect against the new variants, then we'll know that we cannot return in person and will remain virtual. So I think having 2 full months before we really get kids back into the building will give us a lot of information. This is happening so fast that, you know, it's hard to say what will be happening 2 months from now.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Trustee Corcoran?
Yes, I had a question. After that one, it's kind of hard to ask this question, but if we were, and if we are going to return back, I did notice that there were 3 different types of masks. And I know that, you know, Amazon, you did state that the one shield was for the teachers only, but I do know that, you know, with Amazon, you can find anything on there if you're looking for it. And if we did happen to have some students, you know, to come in with those face shields on, how would we like handle that? Because I do know I'm sure we're going to have like extra mask in case the straps break or, you know, what have you. But I just know that, you know, just because you say it's not for you, they're going to come in with it.
Oh yeah, if the kids come in with a face shield on, I would be okay. They must also have a mask on.
Yeah.
They can't just wear the face shield. I'm glad you brought this up because it's something that we had not discussed. They can't just wear the face shield. They would have to wear the face shield and a mask, but we would allow them to wear the shield as well if that's what they felt most comfortable with. And, you know, if in some unique situations where there are students with unique needs and we needed to get them a shield for some reason, we would be willing to do that. Excuse me.
Thank you. That was it.
Okay.
Thank you. Trustee Goodfriend? You're muted, Trustee Goodfriend.
Sorry, I have 2 questions. One is in regards to the buses themselves. How and when will and especially how will you disinfect the buses that we will be using for children? I see there are buses being used right now because I see them daily.
Right.
And what are we doing for sanitizing of the buses and the drivers, et cetera?
I can answer that question, but it would probably be better for Steve to answer it because he's been working with the transportation department. Steve, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. I don't know the name of the process they use, Ms. Goodfriend, but they're currently sanitizing them. We've been doing bus runs since September for some special needs students and some parochial students. So they're currently being sanitized. I don't know the name of the product. We also have hand sanitizers as you get on the bus for all students that they are required to use. And nobody sits in the first 2 rows. We encourage, you know, social distancing as much as we can, but we know that we're not going to have students 6 feet apart in a bus, nor is that expected by the state. But they are being sanitized. I don't remember the name of the product, but I can get back to you on that.
And the other part of it, Mr. Barr, is what are you doing, or what is the transportation department doing to sanitize the seats, the handrails, the back of the seats? Because, you know, children just don't sit back and they touch things, and what's going to be for that? Because that's all contaminated once it's touched.
Yep. It's the same product they use for the whole bus, and I'll have to get back to you with the name of it, but it's like a spray type chemical, almost like you saw the Clorox 360 machine. It's a similar type machine you use on a bus. But I can get back. I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow, and I can get you the name of that and share that with the entire board.
I would appreciate that.
No problem.
You have I know we're transporting our students with IEPs and some parochial school students. Have we had any issues on the bus?
Not that we've been informed of, in terms of, not that we've been informed of. Now, if someone gets COVID, they don't tell us, you know, we can't help that. But we've not had anything where we've had to shut a bus down or do a massive cleaning more than normal on any of our buses so far.
Okay. Thank you. In regards to the daily cleaning of the facilities, the schools, the desks, etc., how do we become assured that this is done properly each day without any slip breach?
I can take that. I would say it's more than every day. It's throughout the day.
Okay.
It's a team effort. It's custodians, it's students, and it's honestly staff who, you know, help with their desk, maybe a light switch. And there are protocols set up that would be where they would be, it depends on the grade level, if it's elementary, middle school, or high school, and how much movement there is. But whenever there is movement between classrooms, that's when the areas they work on get wiped down. So it's a team effort. This is nothing, to be straight up, this is nothing that 25 or 30 custodians do themselves. It is not. It's something that 3,500 students and 300 staff help out in also. This is not 25 or 30 custodians do it themselves, nor 35 bus drivers. But we have a process set up, and it is not every day, it is multiple times a day.
Okay. Okay. Now the gee, I had two more. They've sort of slipped away. I think, in regards to Trustee Corcoran was talking about the shields, okay? And there are shields for children, the children's size. I have shields in my home. But if you have to wear a mask. The shield is not enough. A mask still must be worn with the shield. It's just an added protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend. Trustee Smith?
Yeah, I was hitting here thinking, trying to take this all in, and try to ingest this, and you know, this is a huge pill to swallow here. Mine is not necessarily a question. Some of it has to do with observations on how, you know, if we do move forward with bringing the student population back into our schools, how do we control that? I believe, you know that past performance is a predictor of future performance, that, you know, a lot of the students will try to congregate as, you know, they have in the past. And I've seen that, you know, firsthand within, you know, the communities. I also know that, you know, the demographics that this is impacting in regards to our student makeup. It entails a lot of people who have underlying conditions, you know, pre-existing conditions that will really impact and be devastating should we make the wrong move here. I do support, you know, the administration, the superintendent administration's plan that we have that was presented to us, and I think that was an outstanding job being presented to us. However, the numbers, it's the numbers to me. It's scary, you know, the different variants, you know. Would I send my child back to school right now? And that's the question I ask myself. My answer is no, you know. And do I want to, you know, put any of our teachers, you know, the faculty and staff in harm's way, knowing that, you know, I am not for right now this any just any hasty movement. Just got to watch this one here, and just got to move, accordingly. So that's it. It's hard. It's too many variables. It's a certain type of mask or who's cleaning. It's too many variables combined in this to make these concrete decisions right now. So I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to watch these numbers. I'm going to rely on the superintendent and her staff, and our medical experts to make those statistical to provide those numbers. And yes, and it does scare me, the fact that we're unlike a lot of districts, because the fact that we do have a huge population that's from Wayne County. And look, I'm just going to use an example. Look at our Sheriff Benny Napoleon. We just lost him. And from my understanding, he did everything underneath the sun to avoid getting this virus. And yet, he succumbed to it. So I just want to say, Dr. Hitchcock, good job, and to you and your staff. And we're just going to watch accordingly. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, I respect everything that you said. I understand your position, and it's a hard decision. It really is. So, I appreciate and respect your comments, everyone's comments. It's a tough situation to be in. And so we're going to have to move forward doing everything we can to mitigate as much risk. If we see over this next 2 months that something happens and it's just not safe, then I'm prepared to come back to the board, a different recommendation. But no, I respect you and what everyone has said. It's tough. It's a tough situation.
It is. Thank you.
Trustee Elvin?
Yes, I have a few questions. My first one is, with 2 months left in the school year at that point, the students would return. What is the educational impact that you expect over that time frame with just 2 months left?
One of the reasons or thoughts about 2 months left is adhering to the governor's goal to get students back in school. 2, school is about so much more than learning outcomes. Our kids haven't done school and haven't been exposed to the structure of school in almost a year. So part of their school experience is beyond learning outcomes. It's about being in a safe environment with people that they trust and who care about them. Having the ability to lay eyes on some of our students who we know, based on just sheer statistics and numbers that we've seen from the experts in the areas, that abuse is up and abuse is up. So being able to monitor and see and counsel and provide additional resources and supports for students. Providing a structure that allows them to kind of get back into the mindset of doing school and some socialization with other children their age. Some of our kids have been significantly isolated. They're not in environments where they have the supports that they need to be successful, and their basic needs are not being met. And that's not always communicated on a screen. Sometimes that has to be communicated in a face-to-face setting. For the students who are interested in a summer school program that have had no structure at all, being able to kind of hook them through these, relationship respect that they have for their teachers, to get them enrolled in a summer school program to try to address some learning needs that have been exacerbated. The other is attendance. Some of our students we haven't seen at all. And if we can get some kids back in the school setting, we know that they are connected to a school environment in a caring place with trusted adults. Some of our parents, honestly, have given sort of this virtual learning back to us. Like, can't do it anymore. I'm going to give this to you. And we're just going to continue to do our best to get through this because I can't handle being a teacher anymore. And that is putting a strain on our family. It's putting a strain on them. It's putting a strain on their relationships with their kids. And in some cases, their work, their professional life. So addressing those issues as well. If I thought about it further, I could probably come up with some other things, but those are the things that are foremost in my mind right now.
We talked a little bit about, thank you for that. We talked a little about the, I think the response rate for staff. What was the response rate for parents?
Have to ask somebody to give me the exact number.
We had an approximately 78% response rate for parents, for families, and that, yes.
Was 1,778 responding, right?
Over 2,000, over 2,200 response.
Oh, because our slide says 1,778.
That was the thing to keep in mind is that we kept our survey open so that we could have as many. So at what you reported is at that 1,778 to meet that threshold of saying 78. Sorry guys, my mom is calling me. Mom, I have to call you back. Pardon. The weirdest timing of it all, but if I don't say that, she'll keep calling me. So
saying she's not watching you on television?
Pardon. But it is a 78% response rate, and if not even higher at this point, because what we wanted to do was not close the survey off where more parents could respond, more parents could give information, but the data that we showed and presented tonight is at a 78% response.
We didn't include our alternative school parents or students that are already enrolled in a separate virtual school program.
So as the numbers increase, did the percentage stay static? So it's right now you've got 64% wanting virtual, 36 wanting in person. How did that shake out?
I'm glad you asked that question. We stayed with those numbers because it did not shift. Even with the increase, we were still at 64-36, I believe. So even with those numbers, we're still at the same percent with that response, that question.
Okay. And then understanding that a good number of students would probably remain virtual based on based on the data you presented, what is the plan to right size staffing in the building? Is there a plan to put all staff back, or would you put as many as needed back while some remain virtual? What is the plan there?
Just like every other school year that we plan for, we can't plan our staffing until we know the number of students that we're going to have. And so that's why contacting all of our families beyond the schedule or beyond the survey, is going to be key, because we will need to get a confirmation from people to determine exactly what our schedule is. And the number of students in our schedule is going to drive the number of staff members that are necessary for us to return.
Okay, my last one, because Ms. Goodfriend took one of mine, but my last one was, as it relates to the buses, is the plan to sanitize those once students have been dropped off to school, and so sanitize at night, sanitize again once they're dropped off for the afternoon pickup. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. Steve, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll be confirming that with the bus company tomorrow. The way the state's original guidance came out way back in July was it's supposed to be between every run. So that would be
Yep. Yep.
Morning, afternoon, and night. I will tell you, most districts aren't doing that because they have chemicals that last much longer than 3 hours. So that is a call that we're confirming tomorrow afternoon with our weekly transportation call.
Okay. I do really quickly have one more. What is the plan for non-compliance for students? You know, a lot of people these days are wearing masks, but they don't wear them over the nose and the mouth. They just simply cover the mouth for whatever reason. I do not know because it's not helping. So what is the plan for non-compliance?
So that's a great question. You know, certainly all of us are in these situations where people can't hear us, we're dealing with the mask or it slips down or whatever. That seems like something that happens to many of us. But for people who are making a conscious choice to not wear the masks appropriately, will also make the conscious choice to opt into virtual for the remainder of the school year.
All right.
Mr. Alvin, I just wanted to point out one more thing on transportation. In the survey, everybody that said they want to come back to school in person does not necessarily want to be transported.
Right.
Many would rather just drop their own child off, or they don't get transported currently. So I think we only transport about 900 kids in a full school year without COVID. So we'll see how many we get. Again, numbers drive everything.
Yeah, right now it says that 19% of the families that responded to the survey need transportation.
I like to interrupt. I had a question in regards to, if I can, President Hoda. It was
Mr. Corcoran, could we complete our first round and then go back for people who have a second question? All right, thank you. So Dr. Hitchcock, April, we're going to be, hopefully winter will be over. We'll be heading into spring. There'll be things growing outside, which means people are going to have allergies. They're going to be having runny noses and sneezing and other symptoms that could look worrying. What is our plan for dealing with that kind of situation? What are the symptoms that students will be asked to stay home or to go back home, or staff will be asked? When will we need to quarantine or ask people who've been exposed to something like that until there's a test? How will we handle those kinds of situations?
If they are exhibiting any of the symptoms on the checklist, they will be asked to go home. Staff members, because we have access to testing, they could be tested at the high school. But students, if they are, and students could be as well, but if they're exhibiting symptoms that fall on that checklist, we'll be asking they'll be going to a separate quarantine room and they will be asked to be picked up from school.
And obviously our focus is on providing a safe environment for learning. And I think that's part of what's been the struggle with this, is to balance, to know where the line is between providing a risk-free environment, which obviously is never possible, and providing a safe environment. I mentioned when we discussed this in the fall that for me, perhaps the question is framed a little bit differently than for others. For me, the question, since we are offering a virtual option and families that don't feel comfortable sending back to school have that option, for me, the question is, for those families that would like to come, they're coming to us as a public school district and saying, we want you to educate our children in a building. When do we say no? And so the threshold is we need to have data that says, we're sorry, we can't provide that safely right now. Rather than the threshold being, we have to prove that there's no risk or that the risk is low enough. To me, the burden of evidence is on the other side. So my question would be, there's certainly, anytime we're facing a fear, it always feels safer to stay home. But from the data that you've seen, what does it indicate in terms of the, is there evidence that there's significantly elevated risk at this time for students to be in school with safety measures in place, even if they're not going to be 100, even if we can't, we're going to do our best to keep people compliant, but not everyone is going to be 100% compliant. Not every safety measure is going to be at, you know, at every level that we might want it to be. Is there evidence that in such a situation, there's significantly elevated risk for either staff or students to be in person in school at this time?
So first, I want to respond to the first thing that you talked about safe learning. We are doing everything possible to create safe learning environments inside the school setting for students that we anticipate wanting to come back to school. We're unable to do that same thing in this virtual world that we're in right now. We're not able to assure that our students are in a safe learning environment. And so that is one of the reasons that we are considering or have proposed that we return to school, but do that as carefully as possible to flush out many of these questions and protocols that we need to put in place. So part of the reason we want to return is to ensure that our students are learning in a safe learning environment, which we're unable to assure as they all are 100% virtual at this time. But to answer your question about the data as it relates to inside school environments, what has been communicated to me by the medical professionals and the epidemiologists.
Oh, that's why I say that. I closed it, but you know how you just kind of.
What has been communicated to me by the epidemiologists and other medical professionals is that schools are not the super spreader events that they once anticipated they would be, and that the risk is low when you follow all of the mitigation efforts. That includes mask wearing, social distancing, proper hygiene, and cohorting, doing everything possible to follow through with the mitigation efforts. Where things start to get tricky is when people get laxed on wearing their mask, or you know, there are some school environments where students are choosing to come back to school and they're not adhering to the 6 feet of social distancing. They're just bringing everybody back. Those are times where I think that we're, you know, increasing our risk on that transmission continuum that I in terms of risk. But from everything that I've read, watched, and from the mental health, the physical health, and the epidemiologists, in addition to us meeting with them separately just about Oak Park, I also meet with them every week. They have indicated that schools are not the super spreader events that we anticipated. Now, this is all relative to the original COVID-19 virus. It has not been discussed as it relates to the South Africa variant or the UK variant. But with the original virus, schools, when they follow, when and if they have mitigation efforts in place, COVID-19 is not spreading in a way that we initially were concerned that it would.
All right, thank you. And I will say there's a bi-weekly meeting of Oakland County School Board presidents, also with the epidemiologists and nurses, and the presidents are sharing information about what's going on in other Oakland County school districts, and I've heard the same information as well. But as you mentioned, you are in communication with other superintendents, most of whom have been in school in person. at some level. And so we get, by kind of hanging back a little bit, we get the benefit of learning from their lessons. What are some of the best practices and lessons that you've heard from other superintendents that we're going to be able to implement here in Oak Park to be even more sure that we're doing this in a safe and organized way?
I would have to think about that because, as I mentioned earlier, even though I am on these calls with them weekly, some of their issues are so different from ours that, you know, I don't know if I'm able to say that we've learned so much from these other school districts' experiences. But what we have done is seen when they follow the mitigation efforts that it reduces risk and limits any type of COVID-19 outbreaks. I guess I would answer that by saying some of these small learning hubs, one of the things that we said that we wanted to start out with, I know that they are doing that in a neighboring district, and that's been very successful. They haven't had many outbreaks from what I understand. The schedules that they're using, like these hybrid schedules and or half-day schedules, but yet again, we have some different variables that make it difficult for us to have the same type of hybrid schedules that are being used in some districts that are nearby. You know, my concern with half days is that if families choose not to come, but those are some things that are happening in some of those other places. I think that just procedural things in terms of expectations that principals have and superintendents have for their students, like keeping masks on, how they are separating kids, having seating charts, some procedural things like that. But I can't say that we've, you know, somebody around us is doing these amazing things and like now it's the answer to everything. I wish it was, but I think what's happening now, one of my colleagues always tells this joke about the Oakland County superintendents couldn't order a pizza because like everybody has their own issues. So like, you know, we're all about pepperoni here because we have these other variables. Like somebody else could have cheese issues, so they only want cheese. Like the thing is our issues are so different from other places that we're learning some things. We talk to people, we get their plans and all of these other things, but I wish it was something like tremendously groundbreaking. I honestly don't know that it is. I think they've kind of just jumped in some cases and said, let's just go for it, rip the Band-Aid off. But they're in an environment in some cases where they can do that. They, you know, if they have a half day or a kid start getting sick, they can just have parents come pick their kids up, no problem. And we're not in that same exact situation.
I'm reminded of a job I once had where my manager came to me and said, you know, on our management team, we have over 100 years of experience. Do you know what that means? And I said, what does it mean? He said, it means any mistake you're going to make, we already made it. So that's why we're here as a resource. So I wonder if there are maybe not best practices, but mistakes that others have learned from that we can learn from as well.
Yeah, there's some things, but I don't know if they're anything that are really going to have a tremendous impact on what we're doing. And in order to get some of those things, part of the reason why we meet with the lead nurse and the epidemiologist is because they have a pulse on the entire county and some of the things that have worked in other places. And so we're able to go directly to them to get some of that information and those resources.
Okay. And with one of the things that was, I think, worrying, at least for me, before the governor closed schools again in, was it November, was we'd see these reports on the news about school outbreaks. You know, this school had an outbreak, this district had an outbreak, there have been this many outbreaks in districts. And I remember, and it sounds concerning, and then I remember we had a report that there was an outbreak in Oak Park schools. And I was thinking, wait a second, we've been virtual. So can you tell us a little bit about what the threshold is when we see something like that, that there have been outbreaks? What does that actually mean? What has to be reported? When does it have to be reported? Are we talking about, 30 people in the school that have been infected? What does that mean when we see in the news that there's been outbreaks?
I think that means something different in every school district. What it's meant for us here in Oak Park, even though we're 100% virtual, is that in one case, a person's spouse had an outbreak at their office, and they didn't have any symptoms, but when their spouse called them to tell them, they went and got tested and found out that they tested positive. So they were one of those asymptomatic type situations. So that was one. That
By an outbreak, that meant that one person who wasn't in contact necessarily with anyone else had tested positive.
Well, that one person was in contact. I mean, that person was in a building with administrative clerical staff and a couple other staff members. They were in the general area and in some contact with them, but those other individuals did not test positive. A similar situation happened the second time, where it was a personal issue, someone in their personal lives, and they tested positive for COVID, were asymptomatic. Everybody that was around that particular person, we contacted them. None of those individuals tested positive, but because those individuals are employees of the district and did test positive after being in our school district space, it was shared with our district nurse, and she followed up with those employees and reported it to the health department.
Okay, so it's important when we see things like that to kind of read and find out more information, and those kinds of things will be posted on the district website in terms of the reports.
Yes, they're on the district website right now, those two situations. I am kind of, can be transparent to a fault. So I can send it out every time someone, tests positive. I can send it out. We can send it. I know that my own home district was sending them out every time someone tested positive. So there were a lot of emails. So then they moved to just sending out one email per week. I can go either way. If we would feel more comfortable with knowing, I'm comfortable sending the email out daily if need be. If not, we can send it out weekly. Our district nurse is serious. Both times that this happened, we found out on a Sunday. I called her or reached out to her, and being just like that, she was on it. So we follow up really quickly and are trying to look for any incidences where someone has come in contact. So it's not like we'll be keeping that information. Of course, we'll maintain not share the identity of the staff members involved. But I have no problem sending out an email to notify people, and the health department is notified as well.
And but I think the bottom line is people that, since we are being so transparent, it's important for people to understand that the information they need to keep themselves safe will be out there. And it's important not to jump to conclusions or become alarmed by a little bit of information, but rather to seek more information and find out more.
Oh my gosh, there's my phone a friend. Where was her face on these boxes? There's our district nurse. Vanessa, I was waiting to phone a friend. Vanessa, do you want to respond to any of that? I don't know if you heard that, that question.
Yes. So there's actually, so the state actually is requiring now that we report any cases that are associated with schools. So if you go to any district website, you'll see any cases of positive or presumed positive cases. An outbreak is actually when there's 2 or more cases that are positive, or when they are associated with the same exposure. So the case might pop up, but that doesn't mean there's an outbreak. And then you might see another case pop up. But if you see multiple cases in one school, that's where we're concerned that there might be an outbreak. But any district that you look at, you'll see the cases in each school building, just because that's a requirement now. And then we're setting, we have kind of a protocol now that we'll talk with the person, and then we'll reach out to anybody who's going to be, or who is exposed. So if you're ever exposed, you're going to get a phone call by me, the health department, multiple people, and then a letter will come out to kind of a general letter that there was an individual, no close contacts were identified, or close contacts were identified. But really an outbreak is 2 or more cases. But you will see, as our numbers, if we have 1 case, it will pop up, and it will pop up at where that case was.
So for education purposes, the 2 incidents that I was referencing were in 2 different buildings, and those 2 individuals did not come in contact with each other.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Corcoran, you had some more questions?
Yeah, I had a question for the nurse, and then I'll go back to the question I was going to ask earlier. But I noticed that you did say case and outbreak, and also you were talking about close contact. The person that happens to be the positive person, and they've come in contact with the other individuals, and they did not name the person that they came, like, let's say they came in contact with 3 people, but they only named 2. What does that third person do? Is that third person to self-quarantine themselves? What's the protocol on that in regards to the district of Oak Park?
So anybody in the school district is going to be associated as a close contact if they were within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes or more. The health department has created a not just reporting spreadsheet for schools, but a reporting positive cases and identifying close contacts. And we're going to look at close contacts in sports teams, close contacts of people who rode the bus. We have a whole protocol that we're going through, and we're looking at who was exposed to any positive case for that 15 minutes or more. And we're going to do that investigating at the district level, but we also have a nurse assigned through the health department. And once I go through, we're going to have kind of at the building level, somebody identifying close contacts. That's going to then go to me, and I'll kind of review and go over all of those close contacts again. And then once we review all of that, I'm going to submit it to the health department. And then we have a nurse actually assigned to Oak Park schools and an epidemiologist. And they're going to look at that form that we submit and say, are there any more missing pieces? And they're going to contact our school again and make sure that we didn't miss anybody. And then we're not going to tell anybody their identity, but the person who reports a positive case, we're going to rely on them and kind of the school building in each district building to help us identify anybody else who might have come in contact with that positive person. And we're going to protect the identity as much as we possibly can. But there's a couple different layers of checking and trying to make sure that we've identified anybody and everybody who could have come in contact with that person.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Doyle, I have one after Dawn. When Dawn finishes, I just have one quick question.
Yeah, well, the other question, I can wait till after the questions are for the nurse, because this question was back when we were talking about transportation. I'd rather, just wait.
No, we're not, let's go ahead. We're not going to separate out the.
The other one I had was for Mr. Barr, when we were talking about the transportation, and you stated that it's not 6 feet on the bus, but how many are riding the bus? If you don't know that, I know you're going to have a conference call tomorrow, but I guess what my question is based on, I don't know if we have 15 on the bus, because I know school's not in process, but we have the parochial schools and we have the special ed students. So how many are on that bus? Are they on that bus at the same time? And if so, with the parochial students that are on the buses, are we putting X's where, they can sit one in a seat, or is it two in a seat? And sometimes they might take their mask down to have a conversation with, their friend, and the bus driver's driving. Is there an assistant on the bus to ensure that, we're staying safe?
So for the special needs buses where we have special ed kids going out of district center programs, those are a handful of kids because, 3 or 4 kids on a bus, no issues there. It's always been that way. For the parochial students,
Are they asking?
For the parochial students, I believe it's less than 20, the last I asked, on a bus. Part of it is some of the parents want to drive their own students to school and not have them on a school bus. We do not have a second person on the bus to make sure that they're following all the rules. We honestly probably couldn't find enough staff to do that. And you're right, their bus driver's primary job is to drive a bus, right, for safety. And can't really look back and see what's going on in the back of the bus. I know they load to the back and then let off from the front, similar to like an airplane's doing these days. They're not putting X's on seats. They're really, schools, districts are not social distancing on buses. It's impossible. It is, a school bus holds 66 passengers, normally maybe 78, depending on the size. They're spreading out as much as they can. They have not currently done X's like you said, but it's something we can look at in terms of where to put students. We are talking about we will have assigned seats if they're not already doing it. They said they kind of already have an unofficial assigned seat where they sit. So in the event there is a student that's sick on a bus, right, that we can do that tracing to know who's sitting where. But it's a good idea in terms of X's or something similar to that. But we'll look into that, as we move forward for sure. And that's part of our discussion tomorrow about assigned seats on buses for sure.
Yeah, I only find it important only because if we have less students on a bus, I don't see why it can't be implemented. And if a driver is driving the bus, they do look in their back mirror because they have this huge mirror where they're watching children. But in that case, if it's only that small amount, I guess we can kind of ensure that because we just had a full 2-hour conversation about new variants coming from one place of the country and another place of the country. So if that is so, everything we're touching, everything that we're operating with must be brought to the attention of, being safe, especially if we're having parochial students. And I don't know if they share the buses or not, but I know that question came up in regards to cleaning by Mr. Smith. But I was just really, I guess it was bothering me to know that if we only have 20 students, I know if the bus sits 60 students, we can space them out. But thank you.
So what we're going to do is we have approximately 35 to 36 bus runs. we are not going to skimp. So assuming we have enough bus drivers, and don't forget, you still have to make sure you have enough bus drivers. It's not like we've asked to be fully staffed. We haven't employed bus drivers except for less than 10 since last March or April. So we have to hire the bus drivers, which we will do, or, you know, not us, but First Student will do. We will use every bus we have. If we have, for example, 400 kids, we will spread them over, take out the special ed buses, over 30 kids, over 30 buses. If we have 800 kids, we will spread them over 30 buses. If we have 300 kids, we'll spread them over 30 buses. We will use every bus we have. And the less number of kids we have, the more chance there is of kids being spread apart. I believe the number is 10 or 12 to be able to socially distance on a school bus. And, you know, it shows when the governor put her document out from back in August, they knew that wasn't practical, which is why they said, have your windows cracked, your mask has to be on, you have to sanitize. And that's why they're looking at all prevention measures, realizing some things aren't realistic, but we're going to do our best we can to, you know, crack the windows, like we said, and things like that. The bus driver will look in the rearview mirror, but we're not going to have them look in the rearview mirror and jeopardize an accident, obviously. But they will pay attention for sure. But I appreciate your comments. Those are things we're going to address tomorrow in our afternoon meeting.
Okay, Trustee Smith.
Okay, Dr. Hitchcock, or it may be directed to Mr. Barr, but case scenario, school starts. Will the students have individual plexiglass dividers, or will the teachers have individual plexiglass dividers, or both?
Neither. The idea is it will be, everybody will be a minimum 6 feet apart. You're talking in a classroom, right? Everybody will be at least 6 feet apart. And if you asked me the question, or Mr. Hoyda, about what would we have learned from other districts, it's that those districts that are not having their students 6 feet apart are having to quarantine many students.
Okay.
You have districts where you'll have 5 kids with COVID, 100 kids quarantined. You'll have districts where there are 5 kids with COVID and no extra kids quarantined. So they will stay minimum 6 feet apart, and we will. That's a non-negotiable in all of our minds.
Okay, thank you.
Let me respond to the thinking around the plexiglass issue. From what I've learned about COVID, and Vanessa can speak to this, but that it remains in the air for about 15 minutes. So a plexiglass shield, I don't know that it's going to provide it seems like a false sense of security, and people let their guard down, and then they start to interact with each other a little bit more.
Okay.
I don't know that it's doing what people believe it's doing. So Vanessa, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Right now, the CDC does not support separation by plexiglass. Social distancing is more important.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
I will tell you, Mr. Smith, though, back in the summer, this is how things change. We were all scrambling, every school district, to get plexiglass shields as fast as you can.
Right.
We have 300 or 400 of them. We were going to take tables, 6-foot tables, divide them in half. So, this 2-foot high thing is going to separate you, even though you're 2 feet apart. So everybody was doing this, and now they're sitting in the warehouse to be used for maybe one day or some other project. So, you know, we learn new things every day. The CDC's rules or guidance changes periodically too.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Trustee Lunkins.
Yes, my question is, and maybe a weird question, what are we doing far as our cafeterias? Are the lower kids going to eat in the classrooms? How are we arranging that?
You know, so at the elementary level, this has been, let's say, heated discussion. Should the kids remain in the classroom, or should the kids come in small groups in the cafeteria? I think that it really is going to depend, like everything else, on staffing. depending on the staff members that we have available, we'll be making decisions on where lunch is located. My preference is that students remain in their classrooms and we find individuals who are willing to supervise them during lunch. Because in my mind, the more they can stay isolated in one particular area, I shouldn't say isolated, cold, in one particular area, less likelihood there is for contamination, cross-pollination. Other folks may see it as if they come in small groups to the cafeteria, then you know that might be the better fit. Some of these things are things that if we were to make the decision on right now and didn't involve elementary school principals or teachers, you guys would say, what in the world are they thinking? Jamie has lost it. She should have just done ABC. So one of the things that we really want to do is when we get the teachers back in this environment is to really think through what is the best option based on the staff members that you have at Open or you have at Pepper or whatever the situation is. And then because what works at Pepper may not be the same thing that's happening at Einstein based on the number of staff members that they have or the facility. Einstein's cafeteria, we know is pretty tight. So they may say, let's stay in the classroom. So I say all that to say, we're trying to put this framework out here, but collaborate on some of these details, because I believe if we make these decisions without involving the people who are closest to these issues, we will shoot ourselves in the foot. And that's part of the reason we have this 2-month time period to really think through what all of these things are going to look like. And if any district came to these board meetings and said they figured everything out, I assure you that they would not be transparent.
All right, thank you. Are there any other board members that have questions, have additional questions? All right, I do have 2 more, if that's okay. Nurse Long, I'm thinking back to a year ago, or almost a year ago, when we first learned about COVID and things were shut. We initially shut down because we had a student who had been exposed to someone who had been exposed to someone who tested positive, and we shut down the entire district. I remember when people were wiping down all their groceries with Clorox wipes. And it was scary, and we've learned more about how this disease spreads since then. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that we know now about the spread of this disease that we didn't know then, that allows us to provide some level of safety in coming back to school?
Well, we have learned a lot about transmission. We know it's primarily transmitted through droplets or airborne. So being in direct contact with somebody who's breathing out COVID germs is the primary way that you're going to get COVID. We know it can last on surfaces, but not as long as we used to think it did. We know the biggest thing that I think that's making schools more successful than the general public with containing and mitigating the spread is we know mitigation can work. We know that wearing your mask properly all the time works. Reducing the amount of people you're exposed to, that works. And also having that social distancing, that works, because we know how far a droplet for COVID can spread now. There are a lot of things we're learning as we're going. And they're even saying the type of mask that you wear, the length of time you wear a mask, how you put your mask on. how you take your mask off. We know masks work. Back in March last year, they were really encouraging people to not wear masks and save them for the healthcare providers, where if everybody could wear a mask and everybody wore their masks properly, we could prevent this. There's things that we can do to prevent the spread. And we also know hand washing, it does work. But really that social distancing and mask wearing, those are the two big things. And those are things we can enforce in a school that we can't encourage everyone out in the public to do properly, but we can tell our students, we can tell each other that you have to wear a mask, you have to cover your nose, you have to wear it over your mouth when you're in a school.
And you mentioned that a close contact is considered someone who's within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. Why that 15 minutes or more threshold? Wouldn't it be possible that they could have caught it if they were there even for much less than that?
So it's a cumulative 15 minutes. We're finding that's new too. The definition used to be 15 minutes or more, but if I'm around you 5 times for 3 minutes, my chance of increasing my viral load or my exposure, there's something called the viral load, how much viral particles I'm breathing in increases my chance of actually getting it into my body and multiplying it. So they have done enough studies to say, if you're exposed to a larger amount of viral load or this much for this given amount of time, your chance of actually getting sick from this virus is higher. So that's where they meet that. Yes, you could still, if somebody coughs right on you and they're positive, if they're coughing and symptomatic, they have a higher viral load than an asymptomatic carrier who hopefully, those are the people that we're worried about being exposed to. If you're sick, you should stay home. But that 15 minutes is kind of that threshold that we know there's enough viral load or exposure to that virus that our bodies are going to take that in and multiply it.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Hitchcock, we took action on this in December. We approved this plan. Is there, and the plan hasn't changed. So is there any further action needed from the board at this time, assuming things stay the same?
No, we had just, I don't think further action is needed. We just wanted to provide the board and the community and staff with an update. But no further action is needed at this time.
All right, thank you. Trustee Lunkin, do you have another question?
I just had one question for Dr. Hitchcock. How do we determine which teachers come back and which teachers don't? Or are we asking all the teachers to come back?
We're going to ask all the teachers to come back. That was something that was discussed with our union leadership. And we will be asking all the teachers to come back first in the buildings not by themselves, but in the buildings without students. And then with the students, April 5th. So all teachers will be asked to come back. Now, if there are certain issues that may prevent a staff member from coming back, but there would need to be a significant amount of documentation to support that. Because that would be one of the things that we've learned from our neighboring districts is that the threshold in terms of documentation, if a person does not want to come back, is going to be fairly high in terms of what is needed to support the inability to return to work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Trustee Klein?
Yeah, thank you, President Hoyda. Dr. Hitchcock, I have another question about attendance. I know that one of the things that's been talked about throughout this pandemic, especially in this school year, is that attendance rates have dropped across the board, and our district is no different. Do we have any idea or expectation, or in fact, actually, given that other districts have come back, we'll start there. Have other districts seen a regain in their lost attendance once they go back to offering an in-person option?
Attendance hasn't been discussed at our meetings in terms of have they recouped the students that have been lost. So I have not had that conversation with people.
Okay. All right. I would just, it's on my mind, but I'm going to presume we don't know yet or have a projection yet of what it would look like when we reopen in terms of bringing back people that that we might have lost along the way as a result of the pandemic.
You know, I hope so. I really do hope that some of our parents who've kind of thrown up their hands because they just feel like it's too much, I hope that they will return. You know, we run the risk of some have chosen another option for school for their children if they wanted an in-person option until now. But I'm hopeful that that happens. We certainly need to retain or try to recapture the students who have been lost because we have a significant drop in enrollment. We haven't changed those things.
Do we have a way to reach out to those students who were enrolled 2019, 2020, and we've lost them? Like, do we have a listserv that we can hit them back and say, hey, we're coming back and we'd love to see you?
You know, one of the things that I think is one of those variables that makes us unique is that oftentimes our contact information is not accurate. And to the extent that we can certainly reach out with them. We will first start with the number of students who were enrolled at the beginning of this year that we have not seen. But we certainly could try to reach back to 1920 and try to recapture some additional students who are no longer here. I think it would be time probably better served on the students who were enrolled this year. And we just haven't heard from them.
Can we, is there some way that we can encourage students? You know, when I think about it, like, what's the best way to get in touch with one of these students? Me not knowing, but guessing, I would think that maybe their friends would be the best ways. And can we encourage students to reach out to those people who dropped off?
Yeah.
And say, hey, you know, bring your friends back to school. We'd love to see them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I would want to speak for administrators, but I know they have been trying every possible scenario to get kids back. I know for sure last year we were doing Instagram live videos and all types of things. I'm not sure if the high school is doing that this year, but I know that a number of things have been tried, going door to door, all types of things. So if they haven't tried that already, I know there's a number of principals on this call. We can certainly try that, but I would say that that has already been tried.
And my last question is, in one of the answers earlier, you were talking about the difficulties of not having an in-school option in terms of, you know, some parents throwing up their hands. Being a parent of 4, I can identify with that. I'm not going to say how much of the time, but it's happened, and I know exactly what that's like. But there are also, we know, other issues that are going on. Has the district looked into, for example, I was just looking earlier today at a study from one of the American pediatric publications that showed just a staggering rate in the suicide rates for high schoolers, for example. Has the district done any sort of research on the mental health toll of lacking all the socialization on the students and what that means and how that's affecting? What are the dangers of not reopening?
Well, I did ask the question about suicide to the epidemiologist in terms of any documented social emotional issues that they've experienced. And what I was told was that they do not have any documented suicides or suicide attempts, but there is a number of anecdotal stories about students who have experienced some kind of meltdown of some kind over the course of this pandemic. And, but we are unaware of any type of documented suicides or suicide attempts in Oakland County or in this area at all. I have not heard that. In terms of health, I can let Ms. Baptiste talk about a screener, but or Ms. LeBlanc, either one of them talk about a mental health screener, but we have not had any documented issues. We've had some other issues that probably are best not to, you know, broadcast to the community. We've had issues that indicate that there's a strain that some of our students are experiencing social emotionally in their home.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Trustee Goodfriend.
I think these what ifs is something we're going to be with. I think when we open school with the population, once school is open and kids know that they can go back, then we're going to see some returns. It'll be word of mouth, kids and friends calling one another. And I think that has a lot to do with it. But to go on with the what ifs, we don't know what all the what ifs are. We can only do the basic things that we know that science will help us with. And it appears that we have all the necessary items to provide cleanliness and healthfulness for the students. And we'll have to try. We do know throughout the country, there's been a massive drop in population of kids in school. And what it's going to have to be like everything else, we'll have to prove ourselves all over again. And I think that's what we have to do instead of, we just can't go on with what ifs. We just have to start and try. I think April's a smart move with the superintendent, what she has documented for us. And we have to try it as long as we're in a holding period like we are right now, God willing. And the variances take hold of themselves and people become behavior wise, that will be helpful too. So my suggestion is thank you for everything that you've done, Dr. Hitchcock and your staff. It provides a good answer to what we are definitely doing within our buildings to provide the protection that we all feel is necessary. And then with the population, what will our population be? Well, we're going to have to rebuild it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will move on now to our report from our Chief Financial and Operations Officer, Mr. Barr.
Good evening. Good evening. Just really quick, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will have online community meetings that we will be publicizing regarding the May 4th, 2021 bond. We'll be attending staff meetings and many other meetings. So those will all be publicized, and over the next almost 3 months, we will be having many, many of those. So keep a lookout for informational meetings coming regarding the $54.5 million bond. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any board members with questions for Mr. Barr?
Thank you, Steve.
All right. And we move on to our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Baptiste.
Good evening, board. Good evening, Oak Park community. I don't have anything for this week. A lot of it was tied into the presentation that Dr. Hitchcock just presented.
All right, thank you. We move to our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Ms. Diglio.
Good evening. I wanted to report out that our Henry Ford free COVID testing continues from 6 to 10 every Wednesday, and that we are still doing the standard test for that. They're not satisfied with their rapid testing at this point, and I know that was a question last time, so I wanted to make sure I updated it this week. I just wanted to say that most of the work that's going on in HR is all related to the return to school. And as Dr. Hitchcock outlined, the training will start this Wednesday with our administrators. And our goal really is to simplify and standardize everything we do. And we are sticking very closely to the CDC, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and our Oakland County. So we're staying very consistent to that with the guidance of Vanessa Long. And we're also preparing items, and they're actually going to be in a bag with a checklist of items that will be placed in every office and every classroom and every common area. To say you'll be well equipped is an understatement, and to also say that anything that you run out, we'll make available to you. We want to make this as comfortable and safe as possible. And while there is a lot of perhaps anxiety around it, I hope there's also some excitement around it, that we are looking to try and come back together as a staff, and to also welcome kids back into the building. However slow that may be, I think we're making some great strides to make sure we take care of all of our kids and our staff. And so that's where our focus continues to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any board members with questions for Ms. Diglio? All right, we move forward to public participation. Secretary Lunkins, can you please read the public participation? Secretary Lunkins, you're muted.
Okay. Members of the audience are invited to participate at board meetings prior to the business portion of the meeting, following conclusion of reports, and prior to the adjournment of each meeting. You will be recognized by the board president and asked to give your name and address before making your comments. Please present a concise statement of your concerns. The board president may choose to limit your presentation to 3 minutes so that all who wish to speak may have the opportunity to do so. Thank you for your cooperation. We welcome your input, and we appreciate your presence at our meeting.
Thank you, Secretary Lunkins. And again, a reminder to the community that I know there are a lot of people with a lot of questions about some of the things that went down tonight, that were discussed tonight, and that we're going to be, hopefully we were able to address a lot of those questions. If you do have additional questions, please reach out to your building administrators. We'll have information posted on the website. You can call central office to get questions answered. In this public participation, we would like to hear people's comments and input to the board. So we're not going to be able to respond to any questions in this forum, but we do want to hear people's feedback and input as we move forward, making decisions on behalf of the community. So if there's anyone that would like to make a comment, you can raise your hand using the participants tab, or you can type in the chat that you'd like to make a comment and I will call on you. I see there are some people that have raised their hands. So we'll go ahead. Adriel Lechner, you can unmute yourself and make your comment.
Hi there. You want my address and?
Please do.
Okay, 12740 Sterling Court in Oak Park.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to agree it's a tough situation, and I'm sorry for everyone's losses. And thank you for considering the whole child. I have history as a school social worker, and I'm currently a therapist. And I've seen a lot of families suffer because of the shutdown from isolation, breeding isolation, shaming, eating disorders, and students struggling to focus and become so far behind, they become anxious and depressed and give up on school, and parents who have acted out physically towards their children. And there's lots of stories, but just with all the trauma-informed care and resolutions that relationships are vital, I don't understand how our priority during a potentially so traumatizing time that we know that how research shows that in person is best and students should have limited screen time, why education isn't essential in this way. And I'm just considering the whole child having access to a school where there's consistent relationship with calm and loving adults and having their basic needs met and learning for many different learning styles is essential. And I worry what we're going to do for students that have fallen so far behind. So thank you for considering summer school support. Children are our future, and I'm just not understanding why we aren't risking our comforts and even our lives for their good. Being safe isn't just about COVID safe, it's emotional safety, it's prevention for abuse and neglect, things that also have long-term lasting effects. And there's epidemiology reports about that too. So just thank you for hearing me out. Very passionate about this subject and was in the schools and got out of the schools because I wanted to work with people in person. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hahn.
Good evening. Peter Hahn, 207 Curry Avenue, Royal Oak, Michigan. I teach English at the High School. Just a few observations. First of all, there was lots of talk of the Henry Ford COVID testing, which I really welcome, but there was something in a slide about it only continuing through March, and that's kind of a concern. And I know you can't respond, but if we could reach out to Henry Ford to see if they could continue that past that March date that was mentioned in the slide, I think that might make people feel a little more comfortable coming back. Those air purifiers look pretty cool. And I know that there's this idea of moving the air around, because that's one of my concerns is the HVAC systems at the high school. But when I looked into those purifiers, it didn't look like they were perhaps big enough for my space. And maybe that was just one example of one. But that's a little bit of a concern, is that these purifiers, I don't know if they're going to move the air the way that I think is to mitigate the effects of closed spaces. My next comment was, I'm getting better at this virtual teaching and I'm pretty good face-to-face, but I don't know how I do both at the same time. I know that Madison High School has these carts, or I've talked to one of the principals that they're going to allow the teachers to have their laptop on the cart. So if they do get up, like they're still on the camera while they move and the microphone on the laptop is close enough. So I might recommend that we consider having like these little, I don't know what the carts look like, but it sounded, because my picture was I'm sitting at my desk on the screen, like why bother? And then this is one more recommendation. My daughter goes to Royal Oak and they have kind of like a virtual tour of the building. Like I really appreciated the static photos, but if we were able to kind of walk the buildings, maybe people would also feel better about like seeing, almost like live time, like what's going on and what changes have taken place. And then my last comment is to make sure that whatever our trainings are, that we include the substitutes, because if we are going to be face-to-face, that the substitutes are also trained in the COVID protocols, because if someone does have to quarantine, then we're going to have another adult take over my class. And so just to make sure that we include the substitutes. Sorry to go so fast, but I had lots of things to say. Thank you so much. And I have to admit, Steve Barr knows his stuff. I mean, since August, I was on some meetings and I feel really good about the amount of equipment we have and the cleanliness of our buildings. So thank you for all the work you've been doing.
Thank you. Amber Merritt.
Hi, my address is 26504 West 6 Mile Road, Redford, Michigan. And I just wanted to say that with taking the survey, I felt like what I had to say would be valued. And I'm a parent and I don't want my kids to go back. And I just feel really stressed about coming back. And I mean, my students that I can speak for, we're online every day and it's going really well. And I just don't see how changing that up for 30% is going to be beneficial. I've been in the district for a while. I went to school in the district, and I'm also just thinking about some of my peers who are new and they've only taught online. Like, are we thinking about classroom management and the toll that's going to take on learning? And then, I'm sorry, I'm just all over the place. I'm also thinking back to when the bathrooms aren't clean. I've had students who've thrown up in class and it's taken forever for someone to come clean it, or parents to say, I'm not coming to get them. Like, what are we doing about things like that? And how are we going to ensure that those type of situations are handled when we're talking about COVID-19?
All right.
That's basically all I had to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Admission.
Hey guys, Mike Admission, 35535 Richland, Livonia. You get to deal with just me tonight. My daughter's already asleep, so no need to outdaughter me, Mr. Hoyda.
I'm jealous.
We'll see. I don't hear her crying right now, so one of those. I want to take a second. I do have I'll call them concerns, but they're more they're not logistical concerns with the readiness or the physical readiness. I know that Peter commented, and I will say in talks with Steve, discussions of the physical readiness, that's less where my reticence is. I know that some people have brought up inoculation or vaccine readiness. I'm lucky. I'm 38. I'm in good health, and I've had both shots. But that's because I got really, really lucky at the beginning, and I have a good internet connection, and I managed to stay connected to Oakland County Health Department. Just an informal quick survey of my unit. If the numbers stay true, 12% have gotten both shots. So we're at like 246 people in my unit. 12% of that have gotten both shots, with almost 40% having gotten one of the shots and waiting on a second, with still another 40% waiting to get the first shot, and an unfortunate 12% who've decided for some reason to not get it. And I'm not going to get any more on that than I need to. So the vaccine, I appreciate what Dr. Hitchcock has done, her methodical approach here. And I think that it really, the conversations that we've had in our Union Pulse meetings have been about why we have done this, the demonstrated need to not interrupt student learning or staff work. And I think any staff member will tell you that this is a really crappy way to teach. Even those of us that are doing it decently or think we're doing it decently, this is a very poor substitute for in-person teaching, but it is a much better alternative than the false starts. My home district of Livonia has had 3 false starts this year, and that's low for some other districts that push back or just say, you know what, we're going to throw caution to the wind and we're going to go full bore and we're just going to have buildings quarantined. And so I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate the measured approach that Dr. Hitchcock has taken. And I know that some people might take issue with the protracted length of virtual, but I think that it's served our population much better than going back or forcing ourselves back before we're ready. Where my reticence comes in, Peter kind of mentioned it already. I look at the learning model, the possible learning model that we go back to. And I know I've had conversations with Dr. Hitchcock about team teaching maybe not being a good idea, or how hybrid works for some people, but doesn't work for some people. And I look at how that will work. Like, I'm just from a scheduling point of view, one of the things that I know we're going to have further conversations on, but that we really need to nail down once we know how many kids are coming back. Are we sticking with the schedule as it stands, with a lot of time built in for socio-emotional and office hours at the end of the day with truncated class periods? Or are we moving back to, and I apologize to all the elementary teachers in the meeting, but at a secondary level, are we moving back to 57-minute classes? Because if that's the case, that might work for in-person learning, but it's a really bad idea for, for virtual learning. There's a reason why all of the research and all of the districts really went to a more truncated model for virtual learning. It's because of the the way that students responded to it and the need to kind of streamline it. So those are just some of the ideas that were popping around my head. Thank you for the chance to speak. Thank you for the review, and I look forward to further conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Haichu.
Hi, my name is Margot Haichu. I live at 31340 Pagels Drive, Warren, Michigan. So I am both a teacher and a parent in the district. I have a question for consideration with respect for returning to work and or school. As a teacher, if I'm exposed in any capacity, whether by student, my spouse, or my kids, with one of them being in the district, and I must quarantine, my question is that, will my sick time be affected? Or I'm assuming that, you know, protocols are going to be put in place and whatnot. So that's really all that I have. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone that provided input and comments. As we can see clearly, there are there's a lot of information, and we're doing our best to sort through it all. We move on to our action items, and we'll start with action item 6A, which is regarding the election of the MASB Board of Directors for region for this region. I had an opportunity to participate in the OCSBA forum with 3 of the 4 candidates. I also know 3 of the 4 candidates from work with OCSBA. There are excellent candidates out there. My nomination would be that our district vote to approve Sandra Dukey from Ferndale Schools to the MASB Board of Directors. I think she really has an understanding of districts like ours and students like ours and the needs that stand out. From my question, I asked a question at the MASB forum to the candidates who were there, and that was really the impression I came away with. But I'm open to other discussions from other board members. Are there other board members that read or know about any of these candidates that have a different proposal of who the board should consider? Okay, so if there's no other, I don't see any. So then I'm going to offer a resolution and resolve that the Oak Park Board of Education select Sandra Dukey to the MASB Board of Directors.
Support.
Moved by myself, supported by Trustee Smith. This is in line with our strategic goal, our strategic plan area regarding communications and community engagement, that we develop and implement a plan that will engage all stakeholders in two-way communication through consistent, timely, and accurate information using web, social, voice, broadcast, and written media. Are there any questions on the motion to approve Sandra Dukey as our vote for representative on MASB's Board of Directors? And Ms. Brooke, can you please call the roll?
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Culprin,
Yes.
Lunkins, Smith,
Yes.
Alvin,
Yes.
and Hoda.
Yes. And sorry, we move on. We move on to 6B. Mr. Elvin, can you read that one, please?
You want me to read the whole chief financial officer and operations, the DM, all that whole thing all the way down?
No, just the resolution.
That's what he means.
I don't see that. I just see the whole.
Okay, I can read it. Resolve that the Oak Park.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about.
Resolve that the Oak Park School District Board of Education, in the best interest of the district, award the contract for security services to DM Berg Group, subject to contract negotiations, for the period February 9th, 2021 through January 30th, 2024, based on the following fee structure. For February 9th, 2021 to June 30, 2022, 22 FTEs at $63,342.50 per month, billed over 10 months, and prorated based on school days actually worked and current staffing levels. Director of Security, $6,803.58 a month, billed over 12 months. From July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, 21 FTEs at $64,926.06 per month, billed over 10 months, and prorated based on school days actually worked and current staffing levels. Director of Security, $6,973.67 per month, billed over 12 months. From January 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, 21 FTE at $66,549.21 per month, billed over 10 months and prorated based on the school days actually worked and current staffing levels. Director of Security, $7,148.01 per month, billed over 12 months. The above amounts may change as additional staff are needed, as additional buildings are open in the district. After-school programming and in-person summer school programming will result in additional charges in the school district.
Excuse me, it's July, Mr. Hoyda, not January.
Right.
Thank you for the correction.
Thank you.
Is there a second on the motion?
Support.
Moved by myself, supported by Trustee Smith. Are there any questions on the motion? Okay, Ms. Griff, you please call the roll.
Lunkins, Smith,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Alvin,
Yes.
and Colbrin.
No.
Okay, motion is approved. We move on to action item 6C, which is approval of the December 2020 financial statements. So resolve that the Oak Park Board of Education approves the December 2020 financial statements. Is there a second?
Support the motion.
Moved by myself, supported by Trustee Klein. Are there any questions on the motion? Okay, Ms. Greer, can you please call the roll?
Colbrin, Alvin,
Yes.
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right. For information items,
Leave them alone.
for information items, as I mentioned in an email to the board members, the district provided for our unaffiliated administrative staff the option of collecting, of being paid out for unused vacation days from the 2019-2020 school year up to 10. They were allowed to have up to 10 vacation days paid out as a result of the additional work that was required during those months because of COVID and vacation time that wasn't necessarily able to be used and would otherwise be lost. I would like to propose that at our next board meeting, we pass a resolution to provide the same option for the superintendent, who also would be losing her vacation days from 2019-2020 school year, according to her contract. But again, because of that additional work that was required that didn't allow her to take that time off, I think that I propose that the board consider providing that courtesy for her this year as well, to allow up to 10 days of unused vacation time to be paid out. So that will be coming forward on the next, at our next meeting. Does anyone have any questions? Any board members have questions about that?
Yeah, I just have point of information. So you're saying that this vacation to be paid out, because I didn't catch the first part.
So according to the superintendent's contract,
Right.
she can, if she doesn't use her vacation days in a given year, she has a limit of how many can be rolled over into the next year. And so
Okay.
last year, because of, and that's very similar to the way it's set up for our unaffiliated administrative staff. What we did for our unaffiliated administrative staff is this year, because of the things that were needed for COVID, we made an exception to that policy and allowed them to have up to 10 days of unused vacation time compensated for at their rate. I'm proposing that we provide the same thing for the superintendent. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right. We move on to communications. So once again, if there are members of the community that would like to communicate to the board at this time, again, if you have questions, there are other forums for that. But in this forum, to tell the board about any additional thoughts or input that you have, please raise your hand in the participants tab or put a comment in the chat and I will call on you. Okay. Are there any additional communications or addenda from members of the board? And any additional communications or addenda from members of the administration?
No, thank
All right.
you.
Then,
Steve has a addenda.
I just want to speak really quickly. You know, the leadership that Dr. Hitchcock has provided during this COVID process, this roller coaster, is unbelievable. And we sit with her every day. It feels like 24/7. She looks to us for collaboration. And if all you on this call and the parents don't realize that she's doing the best thing for every one of you, then we're not listening. She is unbelievable what she is doing to be thoughtful of every single person. And we thank her for that. And I also want to thank somebody who's in the middle of my square and my window, which is, you know, we get the warm fuzzies, or as Jamie calls it, a lifeline from our nurse, Vanessa Long. And if we try to do something stupid, she won't let us do something stupid, because she's over all of us. She is an expert, and the expertise that she brings to this school district, along with other people in the school district, is not unnoticed. And, you know, what you're going to see over the next 2 months is the work of many people, along with herself and Carol Diglio and Jamie. And it's, it wouldn't have been done a year ago, I'll tell you that. So we thank all of them. And Vanessa, you're our lifeline, I'll tell you that. You know, if we have questions, we just rely on her and Jamie. So that's all I have to share.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Barr.
thank you, Steve. And I just want to say also, Steve, thank you for your work on the security contract. I know that there was a lot of work that went into that. So thank you for that. Trustee Goodfriend?
I just want to say thank you to all of our administration, as well as all of our teaching staff. You've done a wonderful job in a very difficult time, and you've come along and you really, really showed your stuff. You gave our kids what they needed, and even when you felt so unsure and unconfident about going into a virtual, you made it work. And I want to thank every one of our staff, our teaching staff, our paras, our maintenance, all of them. But our teachers, you've been terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend. And I want to mention, I had an opportunity to attend at Oakland Schools a workshop with Dr. J. Marks. It's an ongoing workshop. So I was able to attend the first session. I was not able to attend the second section, and then there's going to be 2 more. And it's around confronting issues of race in our schools. And so there was some really good, important conversations, and I learned a lot, and I look forward to being able to implement some of that in my work as a school board member as well. And with that, if there's nothing else, if there's no objection, we can move to adjourn.
I have an objection. So the secretary did their part. I make a motion that we adjourn. And our next meeting will be February 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, then if there is no objection, this meeting is adjourned at 10:07 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Great job.